my son who had cancer when he was 3 years old, and I
Mm.
was 6 months pregnant at the same time. And I thought that was the worst kind of pain. Then going through a divorce, it's a different kind of pain. I mean,
Mhm.
it's still painful. And I could have chosen the victim mindset, even starting with my son having the cancer. No one in my family has ever experienced anything like that. And having a young child, and I'm such a hands-on mom. We love children in my family. It was very, very traumatic. And I experienced PTSD for quite some time. And then I got hit with the divorce too. So I'm just so thankful that you are sharing your gifts, because like I was saying, I have been studying your profile, and just even the commercial or your introduction, that the video that you have, we're going to leave every information you have on our show notes here so they can find you. But I was very moved by what you're doing, and also, the trauma that it's like the service, the people that's out there serving our country, and like the policemen, I mean, and men in general. Mental health is so ignored when it comes to men, and I'm a huge advocate for expressing my son and their feelings, and their friends, and that it's a safe space. And just also a background, their dad is Cuban Argentinian, so you can imagine the roots of the machismo culture. And definitely don't cry, don't show emotions. So that's what I've been dealing with, and I'd love to just have a conversation with you as to how best we can serve our young people, and also what we can do as single moms that has sons, or what can we do to ensure that they have a chance at thriving after divorce.
Yeah, it's a great question, and most of our wounding comes from childhood. So it's, oftentimes when people think of loss, they think of like, oh, did I have a big T trauma in childhood? And there is big T trauma, but there's also little T trauma, and most of us have little T, like lots and lots and lots of like little T trauma, which essentially is like, I just relate them all to loss. So if you think about it, we're these little kids, we need to be cared for in order to survive. And so if we don't, we die. So literally, it's the strongest force to be cared for. And we are born into codependency because we're dependent on an adult to take care of us, or we die. So we're born into codependency where we get all of our needs met. And then there's a time when we become a little bit more aware, a little bit more conscious of what's happening. And then we experience either, typically, I find the two primary wounds are abandonment, or what I call inadequacy. And inadequacies could be broader to not good enough, not loved, too much, unlovable, something around that, not enough. And so that's all kind of the inadequacy. And it's typically how we internalize our needs not being met as a child. And we often blame ourselves. And so that's kind of the root, from my perspective, primary core wound. And then there's lots of losses stacked on top of that, right? We fall in love with the dream of our parents being together, and then they get divorced, or somebody dies, or our parents are there, but we don't get our needs met, and we feel abandoned because they're busy working, or we think that the world is safe, and then somebody hurts us, or violates us, or shames us, or humiliates us, right? So there's all these little stacking of loss that stacks on top of itself. And then we go through life and we have relationships and we get hurt, and we fall in love with the dream, and then the dream doesn't happen. And we fall in love with investing in something, and then we lose our money, or we have a job and then we lose our job. So I just want to normalize, there's so many areas of loss, which is just change, where there's a death of one thing, a vision we fell in love with, or a thing, or a person. And then there's a death and a rebirth that comes from that. And so that's just change, right? And we're going to continue to go through change. So getting really comfortable doing tools, emotional tools to move through change, is how I start to reframe the grief and trauma and loss work. And when it comes to specifically young boys, right, it's a big problem. And I'd say in men in general, and just from my viewpoint, I just feel like we're going through a shift. I felt like first women went through the shift of the Me Too movement, where women had been very suppressed for a long time. And there was kind of an outraging out of like, hey, we need to be seen, we need to be loved, we need to be appreciated, we need to have a voice. And in that re-expression or empowerment that came with the Me Too movement, there were some women that were like, hey, I want to have a voice, and we're a little bit more grounded, I'd say, in it. And then there's some that are still very angry and bitter about how they were treated or abused or hurt, which is all very valid. But they're still in anger. So there's kind of a far side of that, and a there's varying aspects of that side of it, right? And I say the same thing happening with the men's movement is because a lot of men have created the hurt and pain in the world. I oftentimes say to men, we're the problem, we can also be part of the solution, or we've been the problem and we can be the solution, to give it more grounding for men. And so with the ownership and the work and the development it takes to actually step into leadership in a very integrated way, versus the two options. So currently how it looks. So what I'm saying with that is I feel like there's this ushering coming back where the anger that's been on the pain past men have caused, as a lot of that anger has now gotten projected onto men in general. And so I feel like there's this wave of men that are feeling like, where's my voice? Where's my needs? And what's coming up. So there's another rise coming up, I feel like, with men, and like a challenge to what is that integrated man